Hola chicos y chicas, ¿cómo están ustedes? Yo soy el señor Dutton, yo estoy muy bien aquí esta noche en mi casa. Yo tengo aquí mi sopita, estoy muy bien. Bueno, en este video yo voy a hablar con ustedes sobre los detalles de la clase de AP y en particular diferencias entre AP e IB o BI, como sea. So the rest of it will be in English, but always start with Espanol. Just jump into it. One thing I didn't mention in the other video where it kind of talks mainly about Spanish 4 is that most classes will be mostly, if not all, conducted in Spanish. For the upper level classes, it's actually a requirement of the curriculum. They're technically supposed to always be taught always in Spanish. So you may or may not be used to that depending on what teacher or teachers you had. For 1 and 2 and 3, they might have done a lot of talking to you in Spanish, but then translating as necessary to English, so you're still getting lots of that Spanish instruction and direction. But in 4 and in 5, I pretty much give all instruction in Spanish, but I do still clarify in English when we need to. But again, it's just part of that idea of immersion is good. Not waiting until you can't wait until you understand every word to start speaking Spanish, because that would never happen. But like I said, going to talk more about AP. One thing that I was going to mention in terms of thinking about it compared to IB, because I have heard this before. Some people say, well, in IB you have to speak more, and in AP you don't. First of all, I would say get to, but also that's not necessarily true. It always kind of depends on where you go to school, who your teacher is, all that kind of stuff. For us, we speak every day. It's one of my personal goals is that the students will speak in Spanish every day. Might be on some days it might be something really short, like 5 minutes of just talking to your vecino about what they did at el fin de semana pasado or whatever. Or it might be a day with a lot of speaking, or it might be like an immersion day. So every once in a while I'll have a day where everything we do from start to finish of the class will be en español. What I say, what you say to each other, etc. So it just depends on the day, but there's going to be lots of speaking, because again, why study a language if you're not going to speak it? But in terms of AP, comparing it to IB, I think mainly in terms of that grade that you're getting, not the grade, the score that you're getting at the end of the year to take away with you to college or wherever you go afterwards, because as I said in the last video, AP, you study and practice and do things all year long, inside of class, outside of class, get as good as you can, and you've got that one day to kind of make it happen. And you've got that one test for 3 hours, and it's got different parts, which I'll mention in just a moment. And that's what your takeaway is outside of just your class grade. Whereas IB, you've got those 5 different aspects on top of, outside of the class grade, where you've got the trabajo escrito, which is some form of an essay or a product that's like that. I can explain that to you more in person if you like. You've got the interactive oral activities with small groups that you record. You've got the entrevista with me, which is about 10 minutes total. And then you've got paper 1 and paper 2, which is actually a test 1 and a test 2, but the terminology is paper 1, paper 2. And so those 5 things all go together to form a composite score, whereas AP, you have 1 day, 1 test, it is what it is, and you get that score. So they both, in terms of that takeaway score that goes to college, they both incorporate reading, writing, listening, and speaking. They both do. So you definitely, just as you continue Spanish, not only just want to be a better reader, writer, listener, speaker, but you do, in the short term, actually need to still be good at all of them and practice all of them for those tests and assessments and different things that contribute to that score. All right, so I'm not going to mention IB anymore. I made a big, long video about pre-AP4 and IB. You can talk to me more about that if you don't want to watch the video or if you still have questions. But as far as AP, thinking about the class, it does have one more thing similar to IB in that it's thematic. In addition to just learning and practicing the pieces of the language, you're trying to expose yourself to all these different cultural situations. You want a real context for things. So for instance, the other day we did an activity and we're in a unit that's on health. And so we had 4 different articles that in some way touched on health. Some of them are more serious, some of them are more lighthearted, focusing on different places, Central America, South America, Spain. And they, the students would take what they could get from each of the articles. They'd share back in groups. They'd go into groups where everybody had read the same article. But the point being, they didn't just work on memorizing some vocab words and work on practicing some conjugation. They had some issue or some theme or some actual something happening somewhere that they needed their vocab and their grammar to talk about or to write about. So that's one thing and that happens to a degree in IB also, but then also in AP especially. So those themes, let me just read them for you really quickly. I think I haven't pulled them up here. Okay, so the themes are global challenges. This is for AP. Global challenges, science and technology, contemporary life, personal and public identities, family and communities, beauty and aesthetics. And so as I said, IB has a lot of themes in common with that. So you may kind of talk about some similar things, but you'd be better if you take IB first and then AP, your AP, knowledge of those things and ability to have real fluency in your writing and your speaking would just be better. So then you've got, here I'm going to give you just the breakdown of the test, because like I said, it's all about that one day, that one test for AP. Whereas IB, if you want to think about it this way, one positive or advantage on taking IB, at least taking it first, is that it's not all about one day. You've got different days, so maybe on one day if you've got a lot of family things going on, or it's been a really rough month, or you have a lot of athletics or band or different things that have kind of been shrinking the time that you normally would devote to Spanish, and you don't do so great on that one component, it doesn't have as much of an effect maybe on your overall score, because you've got those other 4 components that maybe you can knock those out of the park and kind of average that out. So AP, here are the sections of the test as it stands now. This is 2015, 2016. So these things are always subject to change, but as of right now, you've got the interpretive communication part, which is basically you see a series of texts. It might be pulled from literature, it might be pulled from articles, different things, but there's text only, and then it's followed by little short segments like 7 or 10 multiple choice questions about those parts. And then you've got a section where it's a mix of the written things, the lecturas, the reading samples, and audio. So you've got 1 or 2 of each of those, and they're relating to the same thing, and then again it's followed by a short passage of multiple choice questions that have to do with one or the other or both of those activities. And then you've got another part of that first section of the test where it's all audio. So you're going to listen to something and take notes, just kind of freehand, but there's no visual, there's no written anything on that part. It's just listening, and it's all like authentic things, like listening to a clip of an interview or a speech or a show of some kind. And like I said in the other video, it's not just situational, it's real world. So it's not like, oh no, I've got to get to the school and I forgot this at home, and it's not conflict resolution. It's here's an actual thing that's going on somewhere, and here's the recording of that audio. And then you've got multiple choice questions after it. So that first part of the test, you've got those different stimuli, and then you've got series of questions, and it's multiple choice, but it's challenging multiple choice, and so we work on that all year long in the class. Then the second part of the AP test is a little bit more open. You've got an email writing reply, which is one of the easier parts of the test. It's something that we practice a lot, especially in the fall, to make sure that we're hitting all the points of the rubric, so to speak, so that we'll always get full points for that is the idea. And then following that, there's a persuasive essay, which we'll do several practices of that both semesters. And that obviously is a little bit more involved, is time-wise more involved. The email, you get a 15-minute block to read and respond. The presentational essay, you get about 55 minutes to read the lectura or whatever that they have that's going to start you off, give you something to go off of, and then about 40 minutes to just produce your essay. And then you've got a conversation, and it's a simulated conversation, so it's a little bit different. In IB, everything that we do is interactive. You know, you're doing your oral activities in small groups, then you have the entrevista conmigo. But then, and we do a lot of those kinds of practices still in AP, but then on the test itself, you've got a recording that you're going back and forth with. And I'll give you more details on that when you're in the class, but that just tells you kind of what it is, basically. And then the last part is a cultural comparison, where it's presentational. So those last two parts are the only speaking parts on the test. So again, in terms of speaking, a lot of people say that they've heard that you speak more in IB than you do in AP. I'm not really sure if that's 100% true, maybe just slightly, but both of them require you to speak on some level. You do on your testing, you know, on the part that forms your score, you do more speaking for IB than you do for AP. But in terms of in the class on a day-to-day basis, pretty much, you know, just as much in both of those classes. So just like in the pre-AP and in the IB classes in AP, we do a log, a record of our Español en Acción, and I can give you more specifics on that later, but it's basically a log where you're keeping track of your extra practice time and extra immersion time that's not part of a homework assignment, but it's just time that you're fitting in during the week, during the month somewhere. We do it in month blocks. So in a month, you do about 12 hours of extra practice time and immersion time, reading things, watching things, writing things, listening to things, and you keep a log of it. It's very specific, and I'll tell you how to do that next year. But it's one of those things that really builds your fluency, really accumulates in terms of your growth in over the course of the year. But it's something that's a little bit flexible because you know, sometimes we'll adjust the hour limit to it, but generally most months you get 1 month and it's 12 hours. But sometimes if we have like a really short month or something weird is happening, we'll adjust it one way or another. And then, you know, but you have that month of flexibility. So I always recommend that people try to do as much as soon as possible so they don't get into a rock and a hard place and they're trying to fit in hours and hours in the last weekend of the month. You know, if you're just kind of plugging along at it, that's generally speaking about 3 hours or a little bit less than 3 hours per week. So if you can break that up, you know, inside of each week, then you're talking about, you know, maybe 20 or 30 minutes a day. So when you think about it that way, it's really not that much. But when you put it off and you don't do anything for days and days and days, and then you're trying to make up hours of it, yeah, then it can seem like quite a bit, you know. But in worst case scenario, you don't finish. You don't get all of your 12 hours, so you don't get complete credit on it, but you're still getting some immersion, some practice, and that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, most people finish all 12 hours at least each month. So, and I think that's the only other thing I was going to talk to you about. This video is already 13 minutes long, and I wanted it to be short, so this is as short as it can be. Feel free to talk to me later if you still have questions. Aquí estoy a la orden. Ok, nos vemos el año que viene, chicos. Gracias.